now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, or for some of you there, depending on your time zones, good morning. Broadcasting you here live from my sweet home of Holly Springs, North Carolina, just outside of Raleigh. For those of you who wondered what I'm into, you could probably figure that out right behind me here on the wall. But I'm sure you're more interested in learning about the esteemed panelists that we have here today to talk about the future of market research and technologies and the transformation of the industry. So knowing we have an hour, I want to get right to it. Before I obviously introduce these folks, I do want to remind everybody that we will be sharing the recording as well as the general transcription of this webinar. The webinar transcription is provided to us courtesy of Focus Forward, one of our technology partners. I want to thank them for doing that. I also want to thank our marketing manager, Elizabeth Wallenberg, who is quietly sitting behind us, but helping keep all the strings pulling together to keep us going in the right direction. So Elizabeth, thank you for all your hard work in putting these things together. So without further ado, let me introduce everybody. We have at the top here, which is my top, is Sarah Snudden. She is the Vice President of Digital Transformation at AYTM. Prior to her career there, she has held numerous positions within brand and insights leader, including Keurig and Dr. Pepper and Clorox Company. Next over, we have, so many of you know, Leonard Murphy, or as his friends like to call him, Lenny, executive editor of Green Book, what I like to call the industry subject matter expert, knowing all things and keeping his pulse on the market research industry. Always good to have him here and sharing his insights. So welcome, Lenny. Thanks for joining us as always. Being in our third year that he will be joining us here on this webinar. One of our newcomers here, which we're excited to have, is Barry Jennings. Barry is Director of Cloud and Commercial Business Planning Insights at Microsoft. And we are excited to have him bring his perspective here to the table. So welcome, Barry. And last but not least, Charlie Rader, a three-time champion here with us here at our webinar on digital transformation. He's a product research testing manager of feminine care at Procter & Gamble, in addition to some of his other myriad research roles, and known, obviously, in terms of what many of our past webinar attendees have learned is his expertise and insight into the trends and technologies of the insights industry. So, again, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. To get started, knowing obviously everybody's super excited to hear what your thoughts are, it would seem blind and not quoting the elephant in the room to acknowledge the fact that since last year and obviously over the last 6 months, the world is in an incredibly different place as a result of COVID as it is now. And so where I'd like to start is start with you, Sarah. Share me your experiences as to how COVID has changed the world to you, both personally and then how that probably has evolved from a standpoint of your business as well, and as it relates to obviously the research industry overall.
Yeah, thanks. And, you know, all of us are dealing with it in different ways. I have a 9-year-old whose, you know, coworker desk is right behind mine in the background here. So that's different for sure. And I think in terms of bigger trends, you know, we're all kind of trying to be in touch with our people. Whether if we're a brand, we're trying to be in touch with our consumers, and there was that rush of ads that were like, we're with you, that I think people liked, but also that it started to feel like everyone was saying it. Now we're starting to get into sort of the more like, are you really with me? What does it mean exactly? And I think, you know, I'm sure Charlie will speak to it, the dynamics of trying to keep up with demand in certain areas when all of a sudden a lot of that is shifting to the home. And I think, you know, in terms of industry trends, I think I just listened to a great talk by Adam Hagerman from Indeed, talking about how in their world, they had built some do-it-yourself tools that were in a way kind of recession proof, because once you built the bus and got people on it, it's kind of hard to make that bus go away. And, you know, I liked that idea too. And I think we've seen a lot of use of those kind of scrappier tools to kind of stay more in touch in an agile way, or a quicker, you know, like points in time way in sort of that design sprint world.
Well, Charlie, she sounded like she gave you an excellent segue. So tell me about it, how things changing in your world and what technologies are you leveraging to accommodate some of that?
Sure. Well, I mean, obviously, when the first set of shutdowns occurred, I work in research and development. So our primary area of interest is in the consumer product and package interaction. So a lot of the things that we were really initially concerned about is how do we shift so that we're doing the work with when we have to actually touch and feel and experience products versus ideas or two-dimensional type of stimuli. And so we were able to shift to a number of online platforms, or continue to do a lot of online platforms such as AYTM. We were able to continue a good amount of our work, and I'll give you a shout out, Brett, with L&E, and the fact that when we did have urgent research that needed to be conducted and we needed to get it in front of people, you guys are one of the few folks that were having that had a digital way to recruit folks and get product to folks. So we were able to ship products and continue to keep working. So yeah, we've been shifting both for online platforms and especially online qual quite a bit over these past few months.
Well, I appreciate the shout out, Charlie. A check is in the mail, they say, right? Talk a little bit about some of those technologies. What were some of those ones that you've been utilizing that you found to be really helpful and supportive, and how so?
Well, I mean, the shift that well, probably the best way to see it, I saw a cartoon recently, which was, what has shifted the most amount of technology shifts in your company? Was it your CEO? Was it your CIO? But no, it's COVID-19. It shifted so many things. It required people to think differently about what was truly required. So, obviously travel was cut immediately. How people would normally connect with consumers was shifted. So, we've been utilizing a variety of online tools, from online qualitative platforms like Revelation, 2020 Research, those types of asynchronous platforms, and of course also doing a lot of video interview work, whether that's Focus Vision's interview, whether that's utilizing our own internal Microsoft Teams, where if we're recruiting and we're handling the PII of the consumer, then we could just have them connect directly into a Teams meeting and have it recorded into our systems, or things like FoxPop.me, things like what I'm looking for, Discuss.io. Those kinds of video analytics solutions are where we've shifted a lot of qual lately.
Okay. Barry, Charlie mentioned obviously Microsoft Teams is one element, but something tells me the world's been a little bit different for you just beyond Microsoft Teams. So tell me what's been going on with you and how that lens has shifted here since that pandemic declaration.
Yeah, you started off asking like what happened to me. Like Sarah, the home situation is unique. My wife works for one of my competitors a couple of floors up, but we get to meet in the middle, literally every day, to have lunch, which is kind of cool. It's the best 28 minutes of my life, some days, and that's kind of cool. Work-wise, it's interesting. Our business, it's been our businesses helps enable a lot of other businesses to do what they do. And so in a lot of ways, we've just been busier trying to empower businesses to achieve whatever their missions are. And it impacts what we do in that the work grew substantially, and our needs to talk to people, like right now, just really, really, really grew. And for what I need to talk to pretty specific audiences, IT pros, developers, people who run the company. And doing those in person in a focus group facility was always a challenge. But the online tools are better. I think over the past few months, I think participants are just way more comfortable with the technologies themselves. Their availability seems to be better. I might be misimagining that, but it feels like they're better. And I think one of the more important things is, at least a lot of our initial projects, they were about how are you doing it in the age of COVID? And it's really cool to talk to somebody who says, 3 days ago, we had to ship out 500 laptops for the first time because we weren't remote. Or, we've always had 2 people who were remote enabled. And it's really different to go to like 50 people all of a sudden. And being able to talk to people right next to the problem quickly has been just a boon. And I will say, all of the tools that Charlie mentioned, they've grown, they've gotten better, and they've allowed us to really, really do a lot of things that we hadn't done before. I will say the qual and quant are becoming a bit of a blur, a merge, a morph, or however you want to say it. But we're spending a whole lot more time with these tools, and we're digging them a whole lot more.
It's funny, I know you mentioned a couple days ago when we talked last about work-life balance and how much you're working now than you were in the past. Finding any of these things that are helping the balance better, or
balance. I like somebody used the term yesterday, work-life flow. I don't know if there's much of a balance. But in some ways, yeah, they help. There's definitely the always on thing. And I think that that's probably every knowledge worker out there. Probably everybody on here has probably spent more time on their butts in front of a screen than they ever have before. And when this first kicked off, learning how to work this way, I think we probably all put in way more hours than we probably normally would. Yeah, all of the tools, things we make, help make our stuff better, but all of the other tools out there in the research ecosystem definitely have allowed us to get more done and get it done in new ways, and in a lot of ways, better ways. Later, I'll talk about this effort that we have. We have this team of teams process where subject matter experts or anybody who has an interest can help work on a problem. And one of those problems was, let's look at all the tools that we're using like right now. What's working, what's not working. We found out we were using a couple of things that don't work so well, but we use them anyway. And how do we create, I don't want to say standards because we're fairly autonomous within the group, but how do we work together to, optimize best practices? And how do we work more closely with some of these vendors and helping them understand what we need in order to help them build things that will help us and others?
I'm going to come back to that subject in a minute, because I know that a lot of the folks who are watching out there are probably very interested to hear all of your perspectives on how they can be more instrumental in helping you with some of that workflow. Lenny, obviously, I know you your advisory roles, as well as your work with your grit report. You're obviously keeping your finger on the pulse of the industry and seeing what's happening. What are you hearing, and what are you seeing in terms of how the insights world is balancing all this?
Well, I think that the esteemed panel stole a lot of my thunder because they're living it, right? So in some ways, COVID has changed a lot, and I think particularly, and Sarah, you mentioned this, the need to get closer to consumers and to understand changing dynamics and market structures and drivers of purchasing and new channels. I mean, so from the brand side, lots of changes, right? That became imperative to try and adapt. On the supplier side, I think the primary change I would say is it's just a rapid acceleration of trends that were already in place. You know, back when I was a supplier, we were doing online focus groups in 2008. I couldn't give them away, right? But we were doing it. So and now that's the norm, right? So it's a catalyst effect, maybe a better way to even describe it more from the supplier perspective, that there are lots of tools, lots of trends that are already in play, automation, virtual lithography, virtual qualitative, DIY, boom, right? COVID became a catalyst for rapid acceleration of most of those things. We are seeing an interesting trend pop up where the traditional full service agencies are being squeezed, as they have been for a long time. There are some newer entrants that are causing some of that squeeze now too. Companies that I've kind of termed analytics technology consultancies. Companies like Black Swan, Delineate, Absolute Data, that they're approaching things from a data agnostic perspective, and are just focused on trying to find the right data source to address the business issue, to create predictions on what's going to happen. Those companies are growing really rapidly as well. So they're not just pure tech plays, there is a consultancy layer on top. But I think that's driven by the brand demand. I think Barry and Charlie would say, okay, well, what happens now, right? What's next? So we're seeing companies emerge to say, we can help answer that question on what's next. So rather than being kind of descriptive and prescriptive in the way traditional market research is, they're very predictive. So that is their goal. So that's a very interesting trend. Those companies existed before COVID, but they have boomed. So, it's not uncommon for me to hear companies like that talk about, 100x growth, just as much as hearing companies providing online qualitative or in online quantitative or, virtual non-conscious measurement, right? Any of those enabling tools that are designed for a digital era to talk about same numbers, right? Explosive growth. While we're seeing, unfortunately, some of the larger traditional suppliers talking about 40–50% revenue declines. So there's a pretty massive restructuring of the order that's happening there across the board. Brett, you and I had this conversation early on and thinking about the impact on qualitative, and there will be a snapback. I believe that some of these companies will do better. There will be a place for traditional qualitative, it will come back. But some things, the longer this goes on, some of those things aren't going to snap back as well. And I think, Barry, you said it, right? You're discovering benefits to this paradigm that you simply couldn't have traditionally, right? You found that it actually, you can get better insights because you can get a better audience. That's huge. That's a big deal. So it'll be interesting to see where all this plays out longer term from that standpoint of what sticks and what doesn't.
Yeah, Barry, I mean, what do you think about that? I mean, I know from our end, at L&E Research, we're a little limited in our audience because typically most folks are coming to us with an online qual perspective, and of course the tools and solutions that we provide to that. But we also recognize that our audience and how the vantage point of that is a little limited. So you all touched a little bit on some solutions that you're seeing and things that are being helpful. There are one or two out there that kind of just jump out to mind that you really think are exciting that other researchers should be looking into.
A great question. I mean, we are playing in a lot of different places for a lot of different reasons. So, we have a consumer group that loves using something like Box Pop Me a lot. Not something that really I use in my world. Interview has been kind of a stalwart for us because, again, if I can get an IT person together with 3 or 4 of their peers and talk about a very specific thing, it delivers well. And it gives me benefits in ways that are driven by the technology, but not necessarily what's the word I want to use here? Not necessarily the technical parts of the technology. So for example, usually if I needed to go talk to some IT people, I'd make someone on the team, I'd ask someone on the team to get on an airplane, fly to New York, and then go to Chicago, maybe San Francisco, probably Dallas, a couple of other places. There's scale there, it makes sense. We did some groups about people doing digital transformation because of COVID, and there was somebody from Kentucky, there was somebody from Atlanta, there was somebody from New York, and somebody from Chicago at the same time. And that's powerful. You know, if our corporate mission is to empower everyone in every organization to achieve more, bringing in more diverse voices geographically has been huge, because you know, New York has a different set of resources than, say, maybe Lexington, Kentucky might. But getting all of those things helps us message better. It helps us build better. And that's where we're finding, at least for my teams, the benefits of all of the tools are really helping us reach more of the people we need in more places at the right time. We're able to expose them to different types of digital stimuli in different ways, and mining that data almost like it's quantitative, because we're able to do things at scale. Yeah, being able to lean in, do some text analytics and other things, because we've got enough data there to do that at scale. It helps us tell better stories. It helps us make better decisions.
Charlie, what about you?
Jump in right where Barry was, and the fact that the benefits of doing online, and I mean, we've been talking about the benefits of doing online qual and online research for, you know, well over a decade. And but I'll just continue to you know, that drum, which is, it's about reach. It's about being able to get to the people that you normally wouldn't get to. So as you said, you had a mixed panel of folks. One of our earliest uses of the interview platform, you know, we had someone from rural Alabama that was one of our panelists. Now, nobody does research in Alabama for the most part. Certainly, you know, you'll hit the high points. You'll hit the coast. You'll hit Chicago, but you can't get the voices really across the country except via this kind of thing. I mean, she was 3 hours from a major city. You know, we would have never gotten the opportunity to talk to this lady. And getting that diversity of thought, of viewpoints, regardless of geography, is super, super powerful. As well as the fact, if we're looking for, you know, low incidence consumers, you know, the best way to do that is to be able to sift across the country a whole lot more so than seeing, you know, gee, can we fill, you know, a dozen people or so in each of these different rooms in person. So, but you know, the cons to that, of course, is that when you're doing these online things, how do I get products and prototypes into people's hands so that they can experience and give us the right level of feedback? So, you know, pros about finding people and getting the reach, pros about, I'd say that the work of a moderator is actually improved in certain ways. There's less work that I think they have to do in building rapport with their participants, just because you're not having to do the normal amount of you know, hi, how are you, do you like me, all the behavior things of when you get strangers together into a room. You don't have to worry about the person who's going to maybe take over a group. But certainly, we've seen a lot of things, and I work in fem care and I've worked in beauty care, and so we're in the bathroom, in the shower, and being able to discuss these more intimate or more taboo type of subjects in a virtual space that distance between you're on that side of the screen and I'm on this side of the screen really lowers a lot of the barriers, and people can call you for BS a whole lot easier and tell you, not to say they're not lying to us, but the fact is that there's certainly a pressure when you're sitting across the table from someone and you're like, well, what do you think of this thing? You have to work a lot harder to sometimes really get in a little deeper. So I see some of those advantages. Now the trickiest bits, like I said, is when we actually have to get someone to try on a product and experience that. That's when it's the right time and place to look to folks like L&E, our more traditional qualitative research suppliers, to be able to really get people. But the advantages has really shifted a lot of folks, at least here at P&G, to considering new ways of doing it.
Brett, can I ask a question? Sorry, can I ask a follow-up question? Actually, I think Sarah with AYTM, because you guys have a lot of capabilities around video and that as well. Wondering if you're seeing more hybrid approaches, the rather strict surveys that are trying to bridge this gap as well within kind of the survey setting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people who are really being thoughtful and empathetic about the moment we're in also are recognizing that it's harder for consumers and respondents to answer really basic questions right now, because you're not totally sure what your long-term is. You used to have this pattern and now you kind of have a different one, and it's harder to know what to make of it all. So definitely that hybrid is important. Stephanie Vance, I think, is doing a talk this week, our director of research, about that topic. One of the things I'm really interested, Lenny, and maybe Charlie and Barry, you see it, is how we blend the ask and observe. Because I think being really on top of that, both in our qual and our quant, thinking about how we can have them bring us more pictures of what their reality is, or have ways to kind of observe in a world where people aren't certain, to me feels really important. And Lenny, you hit it a little bit when you were talking about some of the analytics tech, but I feel like that's an area for me that is one I'll continue to watch really closely, because I know a lot of companies have these initiatives to kind of watch people doing things, but a lot of things are shifting. Barry, you probably have the UX version of that.
We do, and that's not part of my particular world, but yes, all across Microsoft. And fortunately, many of them are digital tools, and there's some ways of doing that. In my world, though, I have a couple of programs where we observe behavioral data at scale, and it's interesting because we get just terabytes and terabytes of data. It's complex, it's strange, it's novel. And one of the unintended outcomes that we bumped into is we had to do way more qual around it. It was great. We knew exactly what was happening on these third-party platforms and what people were using and how much they were using it and what they were using it with, which is powerful.
But not why. Right.
But we didn't know why, right? And why this set of things work for these people and not other people, or why do you do it more on this competitor's brand versus our brand? And it's one thing to say, yes, here's some data on 50,000 behavioral, things, the behavior from 50,000 respondents, if you will. But being able to go and find the right 10 people, the IDIs that we have to do to go and understand why, what's next, what's different. Those are powerful questions to ask. Everybody falls in love with, the big mass quantitative data, especially around here. But the why, the stories around that really create the right amount of context for understanding. And it highlights the opportunities that we're able to delve into. from a messaging perspective, from a product development perspective, from a how do we, increase our customer success within product A, B, C, or D.
Yeah. Context is so important. So any way we can kind of use tools to help us get that is key for sure.
Context is queen. Absolutely. Most powerful piece on the board.
I like that. Context is queen. I'm going to mention that to my wife and get brownie points by doing that, Barry. So.
It won't work. It won't work.
Yeah, I got to try.
Sorry, Lenny, she's smarter than you. So.
Yeah.
She's like, checkmate, take out the trash.
Yeah. Let me go back to something real quick because we touched on it before, and a lot of you all were talking about some of the advantages that you have had and that you've discovered, obviously, in utilizing some of these more online solutions. I think a lot of people out there, myself included, wonder about the future of in-person. So, we, as part of our context that we've always, believed is, some of you have touched on, like Charlie, you mentioned, the contextual, right? If I can't lick a screen, I can't smell a screen, I can't touch it. But there's also human dynamics, and that we are social creatures by nature. And part of, when you do in-person research is understanding, that dynamic and how we operate in that. That being said, since in-person research has been so dramatically impacted, and you all are talking about so many of the positives now that you're discovering and utilizing these other tools, it begs the question, when this pandemic ends, what do you all think that looks like? And is it completely different? Is it somewhat different? Lenny, you mentioned snapback, at some levels. So tell me what you're thinking in terms of that regards. Sarah?
To me, I think there's a really interesting opportunity to really have the in-person where it matters most. Like maybe it's observing at the shelf, maybe it's handling the product. And I think the other piece is, will be balanced by we can get people from all around the country. They don't have to drive to the focus group facility and be late, or battle traffic. I think there's going to be a balance on that front and a prioritization maybe of how we choose which ones to do in person.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, Barry.
No, Charlie, go ahead. Your opinion on this is more important than mine, buddy. So go ahead.
So the thought is that exact sort of a thing where I know that our teams are really doing critical thinking about what needs to truly occur. So we haven't banned in-person research. There are ways to get with the consumer face to face when it's critical, and that's what our teams are really trying to decide is the level of stimuli for the resolution of the prototype that we need, such that we have to give that to them, and we need to see how they're using it, and a camera is no substitute for what needs to be seen. There's some levels of self-ethnography that all these online tools bring, whether that's a qual sites or a revelation, where the consumer can turn on their camera and we can see what we're doing, and whether that's watching people brush their teeth or shave in the morning or something like that. Those are some of those advantages, because we certainly aren't getting into people's bathrooms at 6 o'clock in the morning with regular in-person research, but
it's clunky and messy and crowded.
They don't want us there, and frankly, we don't want to be there. But I mean, the fact is that getting an observational, of how people are actually using, what are they experiencing, is critical for the R&D mission. And so, I mean, I think that I'll probably echo Lenny, which is the demand is a bit pent up. It's going to come back. But the fact is that we've realized a lot of advantages over with these online tools, and so I probably wouldn't expect it to come back to where it was pre-COVID.
I tend to agree. I think, Sarah said it right. When you use it, it'll be for the best reasons to use it. And I think that, at least for me, at least right now, those will probably be fairly specialized situations. Some of our technologies are physical and or complex. And explaining them through the video is just tough. Sometimes you got to show it, and some of the things are difficult to show because legal doesn't want you to, in a way, because you can say your platform is secure, but people have these things, right? And they can take pictures of stuff. We have a couple of things that are, physical products, and they're difficult to explain what they are, and you just got to show it. And we learn by people's reactions to things as well. We've done groups in comedy clubs, and it really changes the dynamics for people, especially if you're doing research on like a buying unit, where somebody from IT and someone from finance and somebody from executive management are all working on a big decision. My guess is if I do that on a screen, I guarantee you who's going to speak the most words and who's going to drive that conversation. But if I get you in a different type of place and I can use some more interesting techniques to sort of soften the mood, you can generate a different discussion. So I see that happening. And I think Charlie's right. It will, I don't know what snapback is going to look like for my audiences specifically, again, B2B. I don't know. I do know that something will come back. I just don't know what it's going to look like. And right now, it's really difficult for me to see. I fundamentally believe, 2 years from now, because we are who we are, we're going to look back and say, wow, that was weird. I can't imagine that we used to do that, and things may be normal. That said, there's lots of upside in lots of the tools and techniques that we're using right now. Engagement is pretty strong. Our ability to reach different people, to do a whole lot of really cool things. Sarah's right. It's going to be hard to get everybody off that bus. I think that figuring out what that new normal balance looks like is going to be something interesting to look at.
Yeah,
Lenny, you want to tell me to get out of the real estate business?
we've had that conversation, Brett. I think sum up what I hear from everybody is, what'll snap back, lack of a better term, is experiential, right? There are absolutely prioritization cases where you need to touch it, feel it, taste it, smell it, whatever the case may be, or experience the environment as well. Now that may not be in facilities in your facility. It may be in a restaurant, right? Or in a lab environment. There is still EEG and fMRI research occurring, right? We haven't learned how to scale that yet. You still got to go and you got to get wired up. And so there are definitely scenarios, very specific, research scenarios where the only way to get what you need is going to be in person, right? That said, I think that we're discovering that where we thought that was a great big arena, that it's probably fairly specialized. So Brett, here's my free consulting for you. What are those categories, right? Where that's going to be there? Automotive, quick serve casual dining, and sorry, the dog just came in. He decided he was going to join the conversation. I think those areas will be interesting. But you started it with an interesting of what about just the human connection, right? And I think that we shouldn't understate that. I'm sure you've all encountered that when all this started, every conversation became important, didn't it?
Yeah.
Every single conversation, no matter, and it started with how are you, right? There was just this need to connect to people. And as things have gone on, there's been, at least for me, a broader need to connect personally with people, right? I want to hug my kids, my grown kids, I had 2 of my kids come over wearing masks, like, take the goddamn mask off and give me a hug, it was just important, I don't know what that means for us as a society, but I think it's going to be something that there's going to be an effect for that. There's going to be an effect that we can't predict, where some people are just going to say, I'm done with screens. You know, that's going to be another snapback that may happen. There may be a portion of the population that says, yeah, no more of this. You know,
or reprioritization, you know.
right, for consumers, right? So it could be a different issue where we have a different issue with consumers, where we have consumers say, I don't want to talk on another Zoom. You know, I want to go, I'll go sit in a room. That's fine. Please let me come sit in a room with you. That may be something we start to experience with consumers, and we'll have to adapt to that too.
And Lenny, I think you touched on something that I always think about. What happens on the other side of the glass, right? For us on the client side, the conversations in the back room, the person who's paying for the research and the person on my team who's conducting that research, they're golden. And then you sort of finish the group, so you go out for a beer or a wine and you learn more. And then you go to the next city, you iterate in real time, you're evolving that process from city to city, and you're able to go deep, and you can do some of that digitally, but that relationship building, nurturing, and that degree of collaboration, it's not quite the same at all digitally. Sure, we can throw in questions and the fastest typer wins, and it's useful. But I will say, in my career, I have probably developed, nurtured, and advanced stakeholder relationships in those back rooms more than many other places. And the type of connections that last years, where you can sort of get into that meeting a little bit better. You can, I mean, on our side, we're in the storytelling business. And I've definitely being able to have one of your internal stakeholders retell the story. That's a shared story from what you heard, what you learned, you know, what we overheard the person in the bathroom in between the groups. You know, in person does help with that in an amazing way. And I don't know how that could be replaced, quite frankly.
You know what else it helps is, and this kind of fuses what you were saying, Lenny, about the screens, is if you're a stakeholder sitting behind the glass, the thing that you often get out of a focus group better than when you're trying to kind of compete for attention in the wild is that focus. You know, your butt is in the seat and you're there to do a thing, which is listen, and you've pulled away from your other stuff to be there in person. And I definitely can think of stakeholders where not only was the bond Barry was talking about there, but the fact that they were physically prioritizing themselves to be there.
Right.
And there was one example where it was a stakeholder I'd worked with a long time, and we'd done the online version, and she essentially was like, I just can't get excited to read it. Do one more group. I want to see it for real, you know? And it was like, all right, fair. The show will go on.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sarah. I didn't mean to talk over you. There's a thought that I had a new thought. I've never. Be ready. Are we looking at a new iterative process, right? So we always had, you know, qual followed by quant, right? And qual was discovery, and quant was, you know, quantification. We're looking at a new phase where there's kind of maybe macro qual, right? We can do this, we can scale this cheaply to do that first level of discovery. But then a new iterative process say, okay, we got this piece. Now we want to get in person. We want to get close to people. We want to do this other process. I wonder if that's what if we may see something that looks a little more like that is that it is defined as part of the research process. You know, you can do this broad, wide scale virtual component. And the next stage now becomes, now we're going to, where maybe it used to be IDIs or something of that nature. We're going to do more in-person stuff, you know, specifically to help make sure we didn't miss anything in this larger scale process. Just a thought.
Yeah,
just
I feel like in that broader discovery, sometimes that's not always best done, in the person-to-person way. Sometimes fusing that with something like a motive quest or a motive base or something where you're
Right, the social
really
media
looking
stuff.
at
Yeah,
what I call the netnography, like really boiling down the internet to see what's there to help you zero in on where to do the more in-person discovery, I think is really a cool way of going. And then there's the design thinking sort of inspiration of, figuring out what it is you need to learn and kind of doing that iterative learn, build, prove in a way that's really tailored to what the problem is you're trying to solve is huge.
I will share from my end, from what I see every day. Just as a FYI, our industry started off in 2019 in a 70-30 in-person to otherwise ratio in terms of our clients and served, and that's now flipped 85-15 the other way as a result of COVID. But that being said, we were beginning to see evolution to clients utilizing a lot of qualitative tools and online as a means to the in-person being, the opportunity for the brand and insight leader to be okay, we now get to have not only better understanding going in, but we also now have the ability to sit behind the glass, connect, get the best of what we have to look at. Because so many times what we see of problems in the recruiting side and the qualitative side is just getting the right people in the room. So the initial processes enables a better experience to that, which then enables the, kind of think of it as like the difference between preseason and the All-Star game, right? So I mean, it's all the best players. The Super Bowl is there. It's the you get to see the top side of that. So it'd be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how that snaps back. We're getting ready to get to Q&A. I want to just ask one other quick question because I know one of the big topics that's always prevalent in the industry is brands, and are they, where are they in the quote internal versus external, do it yourself versus seeking outside assistance and guidance. Just a real quick, Charlie, I mean, how's that working in your world, and where are you seeing that you're reaching out more, and where are you pulling more resources in internal?
Well, from my perspective, I, for the last decade, have been trying to disrupt the standard process of research. So going towards democratization of the tools, more DIY is still my continued push within my organization. There is a lot that for at least what is happening at in a lot of our R&D places, we don't need external consultants to kind of tell us what our business is. Sometimes there's new techniques to learn along the way, of course, but in general, it's just being able to get the tools and the connection to the consumer faster, better, sometimes cheaper than what we did before. And actually, when you get the confluence of all three, you're finding unicorns. But for the most part, it's a real push towards more DIY, more closer connection between the researcher and the consumer, and less with agency intermediaries.
Barry, how about you?
Yeah, we're probably mixed, and we'll always be mixed. There's you put the right tool for the right problem, and some of our problems, it's just easier to do it ourselves and do things in-house, sometimes even leveraging in-house tools that our company makes. And there's, we always want to seek those opportunities. Yeah, well, yeah, we're the first testers of a lot of things. And there's definitely lots of opportunities with having research partners help us through these things. And it really depends upon what we're trying to do. Some of them we've cultivated lots of subject matter expertise within that ecosystem. And so where they can be proactive, where they can lead the solution and not just execute the project. We value those types of partnerships. We probably do very little where they're simply executing the project. And when those situations come up, we figure out, are those things better for us to do, or for a variety of reasons, from a cost perspective, reducing the complexity by doing it ourselves perspective. It just all depends on the situation.
Yeah, in my world, I've gone from an internal owner to an external partner. And what's really fun about that is the empathy that you have for the owner piece and thinking about how you can custom tailor something that really helps do what people need done. And that's exciting too.
I have heard from a lot of brands, though, that they, and it's been an impact of COVID, that they've made that shift primarily from a budget perspective. And it's not working very well for them because they weren't equipped as an organization to do that. So, there's many brand side, client side organizations where, the paradigm has been, that's what their partners are for. That's what they depend on. So they've embraced DIY. They're not happy about it, and they don't think they're very good at it. So I think that's, it really depends on just the organizational structure. Right before this, I was on a call with a large telecommunications company and their senior leadership team, and they do a lot internally, but they do a lot with partners too. And they were feeling the stress of embracing some more of that internalization over the past few months from a budget standpoint, and we're anxious to get back to the place to find new partners that could take some of the load off of them. But I think what's interesting about that, though, is that and I've been saying this for years, our industry can't own data collection, right? That's what's democratized, is data collection. So, it's cheap and easy, and it's only going to get cheaper and easier. So, but expertise, that's a different thing. And field management, managing the intricacies of making a group, even an online group, happen, recruiting, all of those things. Those, Charlie, do you want to mess with trying to, I don't sample that yourself?
I don't want Brett's job. I want to find me quality people to test our products so we can get quality feedback. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
So this is an evolving role. Sorry, Barry, go ahead.
No, I was about to say, yeah, we can't scale if we do that. And I need my people to scale on the other end of that. And it's, let's find the right partners who can help that, because that's where their value is. And our hope is our people are putting in value on a different portion of the equation. Because, we just can't scale if we were to pick up more and more of those pieces.
Awesome. Well, listen, everybody, this has been fantastic. I know, and I probably speak for a lot of the attendees, that wish we could get to at least another hour of other content, but want to really respect and greatly, again, appreciate everybody's time. Elizabeth, I'm going to allow you. I'm sure you've got some folks there in our audience that had some questions. So if you would, let's see if we can't answer some of those.
Sure. So, I'm curious if you have switched up your qualitative partners, moderators specifically, to partners who are specialists in online research, or if you're working with your existing face-to-face qual partners as they are leaning into enhancing their online skill sets, or both.
Anybody like to start there? So I think if your questionnaire, I think, is looking at if you're a moderator out there, right? Are you continuing to work with your moderators and just pushing them to enhance their online capabilities and their knowledge of the technologies that are there, or are you seeking new solutions just based on, i.e., I'm following the technology and then I'll find my moderator through that process and way?
Yeah, we're not changing moderators. That would be even harder because, again, some of the things that we have, not everybody can talk about quantum computing. And I think having some type of digital experience has always sort of been a part of the thing, even if it's just viewing. I think the evolution has been more on how we are exploiting those tools more with the moderators we've had, but we're not really moving away or towards anything different than what we have from that perspective. The subject matter expertise is way more critical than the tool.
Okay.
And most moderators had a little bit of both probably in the mix, and the mix has shifted, like Brett said.
Yeah, absolutely. If they couldn't do that, we probably wouldn't really be working with them anyway.
I will I will share, Sarah, on that front that while there were some, I do know a lot of moderators who have kind of similar to the construction industry, just hung up their shingle and gone fishing until this kind of comes. Well, a lot of folks that we know that are just not working right now or have closed their business as a result. So, Elizabeth, what else you got?
What are the new best ways you can utilize video deliverables with these new qual technologies?
Do they mean analysis or how you leverage video within the client, within the final deliverable?
Charlie, go ahead. I mean, you both, I know, have a lot of experience with that. I mean, there's two sides to that equation. So,
I mean, so I'll chime in quickly, which is we've certainly seen an explosion. We talked about this last year in video analytics, being able to discover and utilize, some AI or text analytics tools to figure out where the important bits are is always critical. The ability to wrap it up into a show reel for consumption, and then what is that post-consumption outside of the tool? Are you delivering it just as a MP4 file? Is it embedded into some sort of a PowerPoint? Does it go on to some other platform where you're putting all your insights together? There's lots of different models in that way, but I think the critical bits for me is how do you transform captured video into something more than insights that you live through 12 45-minute interviews in the first place. You don't want to go through all that video in the second place, so you want some tools to speed up that insight generation process.
Yeah.
And one of the things we aspire, we haven't figured it out. We've recorded a ton of video.
I mean,
yeah.
Just in case something occurs. Yeah.
Right. And so and what I would love to do, and I think we're really good about, we did the project, we got what we needed for that project. What I would love to do is go back and remind that stuff, because I know that there's more and more in there, and there's got to be slick ways to leverage AI to go back across 85 videos and extract a new insight for a different business question.
There is.
And I know there is, and we've got to find the one that works for us, because it's shameful to let some of that not be
lost. Yeah.
Qual is so rich. There really is a lot there. And if you're doing it, in that way where you get that context and that breadth of consumer reaction, it's valuable.
Well, I'll give a shout out to a company that I just got a demo recently, and they impressed the hell out of me, called Lucy AI. So it is a knowledge management system, AI solution, but you point the solution at whatever corpus you have, and it analyzes everything. So there's a whole library of videos, and during the demo, it's like, give me any mentions of yogurt. Okay, it went instantly into every video and found the exact point in the video where yogurt was mentioned, and it had a transcript as well. It created the transcript on the fly and zeroed in right there. It was pretty amazing to see it analyzed like you would expect text analytics, but to do that within video or audio content in a flash. So pretty cool. So that tech does exist. I think it'll be interesting how we leverage that more.
Yeah, I'd say probably while those tools are getting better and better, one of the critical bits is we learned in our own digitization journey is understanding the metadata. What is the context of where that video came from? Hey, so I pulled up the yogurt quotes from last month, 2 years, 5 years ago, but does what's the context of 5 years? Should I even use that data? that is I think the critical bit.
5 years ago, we were into Greek. We're so Icelandic now.
Right. Keto.
Yeah, keto. That's right. Carbaster.
In general, my thought is most qualitative has the shelf life of a gallon of milk. It needs to be extracted and made a decision on it in a short period of time. Libraries are probably good for 2-3 years-ish, just because, you know, our industry has changed so rapidly as it is. So the value of a library is there, but, you know, to say you're going to load up lots of historical data, I don't know if that would really surprise me, maybe, but I don't think.
Yeah. And for us, it's more of the left to right. So I don't know everything that my peer is doing, because I don't touch consumer, for example, or teams. But I know that many of the decision-making learnings are similar. And I'd love to pull across multiple things that we've done across the group to do that. Because you're right, going backwards, especially without great contextual information, is 2 years? Probably not. Maybe at 18 months, because things change so fast. But there's still lots going on left to right, and being able to touch that, extract what we need in a way that makes sense in an intelligent fashion. That's a problem we've yet to really solve.
Well, that's saying something coming from Microsoft.
Wow.
Right? I thought you guys would have the quantum computer, you know, fully functional AI that just did all this internally. You were just keeping it from all the rest of us.
Somebody else may have that in the company. I won't talk about that, but I know that we haven't told that on my team.
Awesome. Well, everybody, we've reached the hour point. In fact, we're a little over. Really want to thank all of you: Sarah Snudden, Lenny Murphy, Barry Jennings, Charlie Rader. It's been a fantastic discussion for our audience out there. Again, we will be sharing this webinar for those who are unable to attend, or if those of you would like to share it with, as well as provide a transcript as provided by Focus Forward. Additional questions that may not have been answered, we will certainly do our best and ask all of these panelists nicely if they'd be willing to just take an opportunity to take a look. And if there's other questions we don't feel that could be answered, we'll certainly try to get those for you. But again, I want to thank everybody here for attending and chatting today, and obviously all of our attendees for logging in and sharing this hour with us. I hope that you pulled some amazing insights out of it, as I certainly have. And so at any event, thank you all again for attending. And I look forward to seeing you out there out soon, in person, hopefully. Really.
I miss IEX, that's for sure.
Yes.
Thank you, Charlotte. Yes. Yeah. Well, let's do IEX at your focus facilities next year, Brett. We'll do a distributed IIEX, a localized IIEX. Okay.
Wish there was a facility we had that's getting bigger, but based on your advice, it sounds like I need to be making my footprint smaller. So in any event, we'll see what we do there. But yes, all the same, I hope that we are all together in a room together again real soon and able to enjoy each other's company and buy everybody a drink. So in any event, and buy a tea for you, Lenny. So
thank you. Yes, and give me a hug without a mask. You guys have permission now. So.
That's right. So thanks so much, everybody. Again, appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you out there. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.